Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Picture This 1977. Talking about a really fun slate of Best Picture nominees. On the show, we go through every Best Picture nominee in the history of Best Picture nominees. And we've got 1977 this year. Those movies are Annie Hall, The Goodbye Girl, Julia, a little film called Star Wars, and The Turning Point. All very interesting films that I can't wait to talk about. But first off, let's introduce co-host Mr. Chad. Chad, how you doing? Are you excited about this year? How have you been?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I mean, I knew this was the year of Star Wars, Annie Hall. Great conversation about that. Annie Hall winning over Star Wars. That
Mhm.
conversation, but also this year is kind of showing us just how sometimes films are going to be very, very hard to find because that was
Yes.
one of the big things this month doing like just trying to find two of these movies in particular, and it was just a headache.
Yeah, yeah, it was hard to find them, and we're not gonna go into, like, where or how we watched them, but I do think, yeah, this is gonna be one of the harder movies, or years for people to follow along and watch, but luckily, one of these
Yeah,
movies is so accessible that you've probably seen it 30 times. The other 2 movies are very accessible to where you can watch them easily, and we will talk about all 5, because there are people who are gonna have seen the other 2, but we don't necessarily need to go too deep into those because it's gonna be harder for a lot of people to participate. But it's still a good slate of movies and a very different slate of movies. Some rom coms. There's 2 rom coms, 2 dramas, and then a sci-fi fantasy. Western, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to categorize Star Wars as, but yeah, really interesting crop of films, very interesting time period, and we always like to start with some history from the year itself. So, Chad, why don't you tell us about 1977 and paint the picture for us so we can dive into these?
yeah. I mean, it's actually kind of a brief history. I was trying to pick out things that were of interest to me, even a little bit. So yeah, Gary Gilmore, a murderer, is executed
Mm,
by firing squad in Utah. Holy
wow,
shit! They used to do
wow.
that in America. I did not even know that.
Yeah,
Jimmy
I
Carter becomes president. The rings of Uranus are discovered. There's a joke in there somewhere. A racehorse named Red Rum wins a
Oh,
lot in the UK. Red
and this is
Rum.
pre Shining, or at least pre movie Shining. Well,
Yes,
1980, right?
yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe not pre-book. I can't remember when that was released. Three members of Leonard Skinner die in a plane crash outside Galesburg, Mississippi.
Yeah, I forgot about
So
that.
that was, yeah, that's all I had for the history. But I do have some births. There are quite a few births. So
Cool.
births, that's always good news here. People being born. We have Orlando Bloom, Jerry
Mm,
Trainer, Kerry Washington, Shakira, Gavin DeGraw, Mike Shinoda, Ike Barinholtz, Floyd Mayweather Jr., Chris Martin, James Vanderbeek, Robin Thicke, Jessica Chastain, Michael Fassbender, Gerard Way, Sarah Michelle Gellar, aka Buffy, Stephen Price, John Cena. Please don't play the music.
da,
Cal
da,
Penn,
da,
Tom
da.
Tom Welling, Brian Dempster, Samantha Morton, Jonesy, Kanye West, Jason Mraz, Liv Tyler, Jamie Presley, Jonathan Rhys Myers, Edward Furlong, Tom Brady, Two Chains, Fiona Apple, James McCartney, Tom Hardy, Matt Bomer, John Mayer, Brittany Murphy, Scoot McNairy, Sean Murray, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Carrie Strug, Psy, Donald Trump Jr., and if you love This Is Us like me and Dylan do, you'll appreciate Milo Ventimiglia and Justin Hartley. And
That's
they're the
right.
same age, apparently.
Really funny. Yeah, a dad and a son, both the same age actors. They don't interact as their ages at the same time. You know, when it's the Jack scenes, Kevin is
Yeah.
young, but still, it's very funny that they cast
Except for
actors
when
the
you get
same age.
like, the fantastical
Fantasy
elements. But
elements,
anyways,
yeah.
so we do have some deaths as well. Thankfully,
Oh.
not as much because we don't love the deaths. Obviously, they're
Hmm.
deaths. Um, we have Peter Finch, Gary Gilmore, that murderer I was talking about, Freddie Prinze, the father of Freddie Prinze Jr.,
Oh,
Joan Crawford, William Castle, Elvis Presley, Bing Crosby, Ronnie Van Zant, Sir Charlie Chaplin, and Howard Hawks.
wow, there's some heavy hitters there.
Yeah.
And any albums that came out in 1977, Chad? You want to
Oh,
bring up?
hell yeah. So I have some fantastic albums. I know one
Mhm.
that Dylan probably likes very much. Rumors by Fleetwood Mac, Animals by Pink Floyd, Marquee Moon by Television, Low by David Bowie, Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols by Sex Pistols, Odd Job by Steely Dan. Here's that album that I mentioned. The Stranger by Billy Joel.
Oh,
Heroes by David Bowie. The Clash by The Clash. Trans Europa Express by Kraftwerk. And Introducing Sparks by Sparks. If you haven't seen the Sparks Brothers, check that movie out.
wow. Yeah, the Stranger is my favorite album. So you nailed it. You nailed it on the head.
There you go.
My favorite album, 1977, and some of my favorite movies, which we'll get into very soon. But first, let's talk about the ceremony itself. On nomination morning, there are always some movies that are just not going to make the cut. And it's very sad. So why don't we just honor some of those movies right now? A very eclectic bunch. I have a few. Disney had some good animated films. The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, The Rescuers,
Ooh.
Pete's Dragon, which has aged somewhat poorly, but it's okay. Some horror classics: Suspiria, The Hills Have Eyes, Eraserhead. A movie that is not horror but is more sci-fi, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, one of my favorite Spielberg films. A fun comedy, Slapshot. Some Bond. We have The Spy Who Loved Me. A Little Night Music, which is a really sweet musical. Stephen Sondheim, rest in peace. The Rankin Bass Hobbit film came out in 1977, which is probably the best adaptation of The Hobbit there is, even though I do defend them all. And then Saturday Night Fever, a very classic 70s movie that a lot of people love. Chad, did you have any more to add to the list?
Yeah, I'll just go through what I have. I might name some of the same ones you did. I actually didn't see Close Encounters when I was looking them up, but I do love that movie. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
But I have The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, High
Ah.
Anxiety, The Hobbit, Grand Theft Auto, The Island of Dr. Moreau, Jabberwocky, The Kentucky Fried Movie, New York, New York, Pete's Dragon, The Rescuers, Saturday Night Fever, The Sentinel, Smokey and the Bandits. There was a Spider-Man movie, apparently. The Spy Who Loved Me, and Suspiria. And the best picture worthy, some people might argue with these, but I really like these, Eraserhead and House, which is a Japanese horror film.
I've never heard of House. And yeah, I totally missed New York, New York as well. One of my favorites, Scorsese films.
Scorsese,
So,
yeah.
so now we're going to get into the actual ceremony itself. Very interesting, this ceremony. Let's talk about just the actual movies themselves going into it. Obviously, Critics' Choice and PGA were not a thing. The Golden Globes, though, interestingly enough, gave the Best Picture awards to The Goodbye Girl and Turning Point. Goodbye Girl won for musical or comedy, Turning Point won for drama. But then at the BAFTA, they were both snubbed. So neither of the Golden Globe winners were nominated for a BAFTA. Instead, the other three were. And what's interesting is Annie Hall, the way they were, doing the eligibility cutoff date, Annie Hall was qualified for the 31st BAFTAs, which it was against Network, Rocky that year, so basically the previous year, and it won. And Julia was nominated for the 1977 ones, the 32nd one, and it won. So Annie Hall and Julia both won the BAFTA because they both kind of fell on either ends of the eligibility date. Star Wars, the only one amongst these nominees that did not win a single award in the award season, or a single Best Picture award. It was nominated at Golden Globe, it was nominated at BAFTA, but it did not win. Very interesting when you think about the most iconic of the bunch. But yeah, very interesting. The two front runners of Golden Globes night were snubbed at the BAFTA, and then Annie Hall ends up taking it. But a very interesting path there. The awards themselves held on where's the date? April 3rd, 1978, hosted by Bob Hope in the Dudley Chandler Pavilion in California, in LA. Very notable for the Turning Point, which became the first film ever to be nominated for 11 nominations and not win a single one. And it currently holds the record with The Color Purple. Whenever you hear that trivia question, what are the most nominated films without an Oscar? It is Color Purple and Turning Point, both with 11 nominations, 0 wins. And now The Power of the Dog most recently also lost 11 awards, but because it was nominated for 12 and won 1, it's not technically part of that stat. But if it had lost Best Director, Power of the Dog would have taken that record. But so all three of those films have the same amount of losses. They have 11 losses, but Power of the Dog still has 1 win, whereas Turning Point and Color Purple still have 11 losses. So that is the biggest shutout in Oscars history, the Turning Point, which is so interesting considering it's very impossible to find anywhere. So that was a big historic moment. Also, just the celebration of visual effects and Star Wars in general was a big theme. The Vanessa Redgrave speech, which I don't want to go too far in on because, politics back in the 70s were a little different than they are now. But she got booed in her speech for Best Supporting Actress, trying to bring up the Lebanon, Palestine, Israel tensions and all that stuff in her speech. She was booed.
And you have refused to be intimidated by the threats of a small bunch of Zionist hoodlums whose behavior...
I I implore people to go check it out. It's very interesting. It's so much to get into that I don't want to like go word for word into what it was about, but very interesting night. A lot of tension for those awards when Vanessa Redgrave won her Oscar for Julia. But we will talk about that when we get to Julia itself and that performance. But let's get into the actual movies themselves. Let's start with the Best Picture winner. It's the first alphabetically. Let's start with Annie Hall, Woody Allen's film, 1977. Chad, tell us about it.
Absolutely. Annie Hall, directed by Woody Allen, written by Woody Allen and Marshall Brookman. Cinematography by Gordon Willis. Music by various artists, apparently. Starring Woody Allen, Diane Keaton, Tony Roberts, Carol Kane, Paul Simon, Janet Margolin, Shelley Duvall, Christopher Walken, etc. Synopsis. Albie Singer tries to figure out why his relationship failed with Annie Hall.
Yes. So a little bit of background. I first saw this movie a few years ago because I wanted to see how did any movie possibly beat Star Wars. I was on my high horse, whatever, and I watched this, and because I was still in the mind of nothing can touch Star Wars, it's perfect, I hated it. I was like, this movie sucks. I want nothing to do with it. I wrote it off. And because it also helped the fact that Woody Allen was not the most loved person in media in the news, so it was easy to bandwagon on that. But rewatching it, I gotta say, this movie's pretty freaking excellent. I really enjoy it, and I almost wish I didn't because I don't love Woody Allen as a person. I'm not a huge fan of all his work. I'm very hit or miss when it comes to Woody Allen, but this one, it spoke to me this time, and it's weird because I didn't expect it to in such a profound way. But Chad, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Was this your first time seeing this? Had you seen this before? And what is your experience with this film like?
Well, I mean, I have a different experience because I don't come from the same. I'm wearing the shirt, but I don't come from the same like love like ever since I was a kid or anything like that from Star Wars. I didn't start to get big into Star Wars until like the Force Awakens started to come out. Actually,
Yeah.
so I had seen Star Wars before Annie Hall, I'm sure. But Annie Hall I saw before I was super into Star Wars, so I didn't have that whole Oscar thing in my head at the time when I first saw Annie Hall. I'm pretty sure I didn't even know Star Wars had been nominated for an Oscar.
Right.
And then I found out much later. So I have a different perspective. I had seen Annie Hall a while ago, and then rewatching it now, I knew that I liked the movie, but I couldn't remember that much about it. So that's kind of like my background. I
Mhm.
always liked the movie. I've never absolutely like adored the movie, but I do think it is brilliant, and I do think that it is, just like a very different kind of rom com. I love how Woody Allen and other characters too break the fourth wall.
What do you want? It was my first play. You know how you're always trying to get things to come out perfect in art because it's real difficult in life.
Yeah, I like what you said about the breaking of convention because, with a rom-com, that's not the genre you first think of when you think of like cinematic in invention and making something new and reinvention. Like usually you think, oh yeah, your big blockbusters are where you're gonna like try really something new and bold and artistic. But I like how Woody Allen was able to take something that is so small as a rom-com and make it feel so fresh and new because of the breaking of the fourth walls and just the different elements of the dialogue and how he intertwines the dialogue and edits the whole film together and the side by sides of certain scenes. Yeah, it's just such a masterclass in just the actual construction of filmmaking, and it's so refreshing to see, especially nowadays when a lot of your rom-coms are very run of the mill, very hitting very certain beats in very specific orders, not really bringing anything new to the stylistic elements. This one feels fresh and new, even today. And I like that. And like you said with the comedy, yeah, it's so good because it's not your like happy, everyone's sweet in love, everything ends happily ever after rom-com. It's not. It's a very nihilistic view. But I think
Mhm.
that works, especially because Woody Allen is basically writing himself in this role. And give love or hate Woody Allen, which I hope more people are on the other fence of. Like, I hope people don't admire him as much as a person for some of the stuff he's done, but just as a filmmaker, I like how he does bring his whole raw vulnerability to this role. Like you can see a lot of him in the role, not just as the performer, but like in the writing and the text, and you can feel how incredibly personal it is to him. because this character is really not that likable. He's funny, but he's not like your stereotypical like dashing leading man. Like, oh, like all the girls are gonna like swoon over this guy. Like, no, he's kind of an asshole at times. But I think that works in this movie and the overall attitude and tone he's trying to bring to it, and the humor. It's very sarcastic. It's very witty. It's very nihilistic, pessimistic. It's the glass half empty type thing. But I think that fits this style, and it fits this story that he's specifically trying to tell, that makes it refreshing. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I mean, you can actually, like, I was kind of thinking about this, where you could, spoiler alert for When Harry Met Sally, because
yeah.
I think you can actually kind of like put these side by side and
Mhm.
just see how different Annie Hall is as a film, where it's like they're both kind of very similar, where they like, it's two people, they, kind of like get together at some point, and then they drift apart and then come back together at different points. And then, with Annie Hall, he tells you like this, the relationship failed, how, and then, with When Harry Met Sally, they do get together in the end, but Annie
Mhm.
Hall, not so much. So exactly like you said about like more of a nihilistic
Mhm.
kind of view about like, some relationships don't tend to work out. People drift apart, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I do, yeah, love kind of like the dark comedy in this, like when he's like a
Mhm.
kid and he's like, they're like, why are you doing good in school? And he's like, the universe is expanding. Why even try or whatever? And the mom's
Yeah.
like, what's that your business?
Yeah.
And then,
So smart, so clever. And
and
just
then you have,
another thing with when they're
uh,
younger, when he's going around the classroom and talking about all these like crimes these kids committed when they were older.
I'm president of the Pincus Plumbing Company. I sell taluses. I used to be a heroin addict. Now I'm a methadone addict.
it kind of throws
So
you
funny.
off, like, wait, what?
Such a
This is
great like
cool.
dichotomy. Yeah, no, I love that.
And then you have
And
like the
yeah.
parts. I just wanted to throw out you out the other part too with Christopher Walken. And he
Yes,
just like
yes.
shows up and he's like, sometimes I just think about like driving into oncoming traffic and, there would be a massive explosion. And then he drives
Mhm.
them home and you get to see their face.
Yes, yes, immediate cutaway to the car. Yeah, there's so many good sequences. Yeah, the lobsters in the kitchen is an iconic one. Like that's just iconic
Hmm.
imagery.
Give it to me. No. Look, one crawl behind the refrigerator.
Just the very physical comedy is also there, which I really like. But it's not too in your face. It feels raw. It feels real. And that's the thing that I appreciate about it so much now, is that it feels so real. I think as I'm older, I'm kind of experiencing different experiences in life that like make this movie more relatable. Not necessarily beat for beat, with these characters, but just the overall idea of getting older and what love means and the way we navigate relationships, and also New York City being such a big factor of it too. Like
Yes.
and that flavor that he brings to the film with just the New York City stuff, like the Beekman Theater where they will go is where I used to go all the time freshman year of college.
Oh.
That was my go-to movie theater until they knocked it down my sophomore year of college, which is very
Mm.
sad. So it doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, like just little landmarks like that. I actually love that scene because they talk about The Godfather and Diane Keaton was in The Godfather. So I think it's just very funny that like in
Yes.
in this universe The Godfather exists, so they must have seen Diane Keaton in The Godfather. So Diane Keaton exists in the world of Annie Hall, which I think is very
Yep.
very funny. So Annie Hall knows about Diane Keaton, which is just some
He even
weird
says he even
inception.
says I'm here with the cast of The Godfather.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little sly little like wink at the audience, which I really like.
And I
Um
also love just like, just little bits where you just show it's almost like a Larry David, but like not he's like
yeah.
a different kind of comedy when he's like in the
Mhm.
line, like, how would people just like stand in the line saying all their opinions this loud? Like no one wants to hear that. It's just kind of funny
Yeah,
because
and
you
those are the
think
best
about
fourth
things like
wall
that
breaks.
in
Yeah.
daily life. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's so funny, and Diane Keaton great too. Like I think a lot of it
absolutely.
has it's centered around Woody Allen's character, but yeah, she is the main like I mean she's the titular role, and I think she brings a lot of great humanity to it because he is so cold. She needs to kind of be a bit more of an opposite to give us a better dynamic. And I like that. She has moments of innocence, she has moments of weakness, she has moments of strength. I think she's one of the really well thought out, especially in the '70s, and this whole slate of films, honestly. I think all five films have really strong women characters. And I think
Yes.
that's really
Yeah.
something that sets this year apart from a lot of other '70s years when we had like your mobster movies and Jaws and these movies that just don't have a lot of like women roles or women roles who are like in control or have a prominent arc in the sense that like they feel like they're almost kind of supporting the men. Here, it's like they all get their own standout moments, which I like, especially just at the time, considering that wasn't as seen. Like I remember when we did 1975, there was one actress we thought of, and then we were struggling to find another actress, and I literally had to be like, we're gonna go with Miss whatever her
The
name is,
mom of the kid,
the
yeah.
mom of the kid from Jaws, because it was slim pickings. But now we get a lot of great women performances in these, and male performances as well, as always. But like, yeah, I just really appreciate that. Also, just about this whole slate. But Diane Keaton is very, very good in this.
I mean, he wrote that role for Diane Keaton, especially, apparently.
Yeah.
So
It's one of those movies that, like, for the first time when I saw it, I just didn't grasp it. But now seeing it again, I have, and I'm excited to go revisit this movie as I get older, and just as life changes and life goes on, just to see how
Very
it
true.
evolves with me. So
because we can all relate to relationships like that. Maybe not
Yeah.
relationships failing, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But all the ins and outs, because it's not just about
Yep.
the failing. It's we see the start of it, we see love it, we see all the ups and downs. The first dinner with a family, which is so awkward.
Who's gonna kill the bug in the room?
Yeah,
Kind of a
yeah.
deal, and then turns out you're both scared of the bug.
Yeah, yeah, I do love it. So I'm glad I came around to it, because last month I teased. I was like, oh, I have a hot take, and my hot take was that I don't like Annie
Ooh.
Hall. But now I'm like, I don't have a hot take anymore because I like Annie Hall. So
There you go.
maybe I'll have a hot take later. Maybe one of these movies that I don't like, everyone loves, and I didn't know. So maybe that'll be my hot
Star
take.
Wars?
But
Oh,
yeah, no, Star Wars is trash.
it is
But
the worst.
the Oscars definitely didn't think that Annie Hall was trash, because it gave it 4 out of 5 Oscars. Not nominated for a ton, but it definitely won a lot. It won 4 pretty big ones: Best Picture, Best Director for Woody Allen, Best Actress for Diane Keaton, and Best Original Screenplay. It didn't win Best Actor, but that was the 5th nomination it had for Woody Allen. But again, he won for Screenplay and Director and Picture, so he was fine with just the 3 he got. I don't think he necessarily needed the 4th on top of that. But yeah, a very big crop of wins for that film. They said goodbye to the Oscars in quite a glorious fashion. Let's say goodbye to another film. Or
To
say
the girl?
hello. Why not? Why don't we say hello to The Goodbye Girl?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. The Goodbye Girl, directed by Herbert Ross, written by Neil Simon, cinematography by David M. Walsh, music by Dave Grusin, starring Richard Dreyfuss, Marsha Mason, Quinn Cummings, Paul Benedict, Barbara Rhodes, etc. Synopsis: a struggling actor and a recently abandoned single mom fall in love as they are forced to share an apartment together.
Yeah. What a crazy premise. Like, I just
Yeah.
I think the premise alone, I think this movie is hilarious. I think this is probably one of
Yes.
definitely the funniest. I think even funnier than Annie Hall, because Annie Hall said like that darker drama. Like, this one just flat out funny to me. But the premise of just like someone leaving their girlfriend and her kid, not telling her that he gave the apartment, sublet it to his actor friend, and then in the middle of this raining, pouring night, he comes knocking at the door. I just thought that was such a crazy premise, but it's so fun. Like, I love Neil Simon. I am, Neil Simon's more of a theater name than a film name, but he has translated well to film. But like, he's the one who wrote, The Odd Couple, and stories like that, The Sunshine Boys and Biloxi Blues, and all these really fun plays that have like this really great energy about them. And Neil Simon just brings that energy to this film. But just the premise alone is just so fun, because it's got that odd couple nature of just like how is this all gonna work? Like, just from the start, it's almost doomed.
I'm not crazy about the arrangements.
You're not.
Definitely not. I'm paying the rent. I will make it a rules. I like to take showers every morning, and I don't like the panties drying on the rod.
I like to think of this as the other end of the coin. If we're looking at Annie Hall and Goodbye Girl, one is much more the like nihilistic kind of like cynical side of romances, but then the other is just this sweet, sappy, fun, charming like other end of the coin. And I like how they both came out in the same year, because I think, like you were saying with When Harry Met Sally, I think you could also compare this with Annie Hall, because it ends in such a different way, but a lot of the pathway to get there is a lot of the same. It's similar. It's these people who at first aren't getting along, but then they learn to, or they have their ups and downs. Whereas Annie Hall, they get along really good at the start, and then they start to unravel as it goes along. It's the total opposite, which is really interesting. Had you seen this before, Chad?
No.
Okay, so I'd love to
Not
get
at
your
all.
thoughts, because I had read the play, but I had never actually seen the film before. So I'd like to hear your thoughts.
No, I mean, I think I've always remember hearing talk of the Goodbye Girl, but I just
Mhm.
know, like, in consciousness that name of a movie, the title. But I didn't know anything about it, or I didn't even know Richard Dreyfuss was in it.
Mhm.
But watching it for the first time, I really, really liked this movie quite a bit. Yeah, I love the premise, and I didn't know what the premise was going to be until it was just unfolding right in front of me. So
Yeah.
it was really interesting, and it was just really funny because I think Richard Dreyfuss is very, very funny in this movie in particular. Just forcing his way into this apartment because he feels like he's owed this apartment. He paid
Mhm.
money for it, and he's trying to become an actor, and he's trying to put on these plays and stuff like that. And so, he comes in and he's like, and then she's trying to make these ground rules. And I love that he turns it on her and he's like, no, 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 that's not going to work for me. This is how it's going to go down. And he explains all this stuff. And he's, by the way, I sleep in the nude.
Also, I sleep in the nude. A buffo. Winter and summer, rain or snow, with the windows open.
Because
Yeah,
if
go
you're
ahead.
looking at it from his perspective, it's like, no, like you were you paid for this, and you want
Yeah.
to like you're thinking you're gonna come to an empty apartment and get to just stay in it. So like I get where he's coming from, and yes, we see it mostly
Yes.
from her perspective early on. So like we're meant to kind of be like, who's this guy intruding? But at the same time, his side is very relatable, and I like that about this movie is we see both sides because from her perspective, like she's been living there. If you're in her shoes, you're like, no, why would you leave? Like you, this is your home. But then from his perspective, it's like, no, but you're paying rent. So like, I like how all sides are seen and like both sides are very justified in their reasonings for being frustrated at the other. And I think that's the best type of relationship when it's not one sided, where it's very clear who you should be rooting for at each time. Like it's very much an ebb and flow between the two, which I really like.
Yeah, and I also just really like how you can see, like his struggles, their struggles, but then you can see how they kind of complement each other and these relationships develop. Because you could see like the daughter kind of wants I don't want to say like, you need like a male influence in your life or anything
No.
like that, but she just like has always been kind of
Mhm.
thrown away almost, like they're
Yeah.
both kind of the goodbye girls, like they get
Hmm.
dumped on if
Yeah.
someone leaves them.
I love
And then
that.
this
Yeah.
one guy, you get to see, is he going to do the same thing? And then
Mhm.
they start to build this relationship together, him and the mom, and him and the daughter. And it's very sweet. And then at the end you get to see that they, as soon as he gets a job, as soon as he gets like a movie that he's going to do, you're like, oh, good for him. But then they're in their minds, here it is again. He's going to leave. And
Mhm.
so they're terrified and they're just like, just go if you're going to leave. And, you know, why did we open ourselves up again? This is stupid.
Right.
We keep doing this, and they keep leaving. And he doesn't. And he's sitting there like, why don't you come with me then? If you don't believe that I'm going to come back. And then it doesn't hit her that he's coming back until, you left your guitar here.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
coming
like
back.
when you leave your most prized possession, it's like a almost like a promise ring. It's like that, like I'm gonna come back for you type thing.
I love you! Never mind that! You're rusting my guitar!
All your life you've waited.
It is so
Mhm.
sappy, it's very melodramatic, but I feel like in this slate particularly where like there are some feel good moments in a lot of these films, but like some of these films are pretty heavy, and I like how this film just feels like a breath of fresh air at the time too. Like I feel like this kind of made the template for future rom-coms of a similar style, like that odd couple doesn't get along, learns to love each other thing, because it gets very sappy and melodramatic, but I like it. Like I think it works for
Same.
this story, and I
Yeah.
think these characters do feel a little larger than life, but also humane at the same time. It's just such an interesting parallel with Annie Hall. Um, yeah, and I didn't even realize this, but the play came after. So Neil Simon wrote this for the screen,
Oh.
which is very interesting because he would normally write plays and then they would make them into movies, but now it's him writing for the movie that he would later make into a play. But and that's what I like about it, is it also feels cinematic. I gotta also say, Richard Dreyfuss's Richard III scenes are so funny, because he basically takes this interpretation of this character that we've seen in a lot of Shakespeare, like it's the stoic king, it's Richard III, and he like turns it on its head, makes it like how he envisions Richard III to be, is very flamboyant, over the top, and I just love those Shakespeare scenes because his reviews, they get panned for it. for his performance, but like it's entertaining to me just watching Richard Dreyfuss just have so much fun in this role. It's fun when actors get to play actors because they get to like basically play a role within a role. And here we get to see him play his character, but also play Richard III in this totally over the top, flamboyant, version, and I love it. I mean, it was quite entertaining. And it
That's an
really, yeah.
interesting kind of like take that you have, because I don't know that play that you're talking about.
Mhm.
So I didn't know that wasn't supposed to be how he's supposed to do it, but it was
Yeah.
fun to see him acting this out with like a hunch or something like that in a cane in the bedroom, and just like see her walking in, and I'm like, he's gonna like, break character, and he doesn't. He just keeps being the silly ass
Yeah.
Richard Dreyfuss, and I love it.
Yeah, and Richard Dreyfuss is really incredible, and we might talk about it a little later, but I really do think he brought his all to this role. Like, we've seen him in great stuff. You gave him the award for American Graffiti. We talked about him with Jaws, but he's just one of those actors who's always consistent. And when I heard that he won an Oscar this year, I was like, oh great, so he must have won for Close Encounters, and it was like, no, he wasn't nominated. And I was like, what? And then I see this, and I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense because he is so good in this role, and if he's going to win his Oscar, and I don't know if he has one or two, but this is definitely one that I think is worthy because he is so good. Let me just look, because I don't know how many Oscars he has. Yeah, he only has, oh no, he has one, and then he was nominated for Mr. Holland's Opus. So yeah, and at the time he was the youngest actor ever to win at age 30, which is pretty impressive. He was a 30-year-old guy who came in just having done Jaws, did Close Encounters this year, gets an Oscar for his either second or third big film like this. Like, well, actually, American Graffiti was also before this, but generally young actor getting an award. So that was really fun. I do love what you said though about them both being the goodbye girl. I never thought of that. I was like, yeah, it's not just the mom, it's the kid too. And I love that angle too, because her story is just as important as you said. Like, and I love those moments where he's connecting with her, because it's more than just this
Yeah.
relationship of romance. It's, if anything, he's more in love at first with the kid. He doesn't warm up to Paula until later on. Like, he warms up to Lucy first, which I really like. Yeah, it's such a sweet film. Such a sweet film. I
Very
just
sweet,
a
yeah.
beaming smile across the whole time. Goodbye Girl, nominated for 5 Oscars as well. Only wins one, but it is for Richard Dreyfuss. Wins for Best Actor. It is also nominated for Best Picture, Best Actress for Marsha Mason, Best Supporting Actress for Quinn Cummings, who was probably one of the youngest supporting actress nominees at the time, and Original Screenplay, because Neil Simon wrote that right for the screen, which is very, very cool. Very cool. Speaking of girls and saying goodbye, we're going to keep the theme. We're going to talk about another girl right now. We're going to talk about Julia. That's the best way I could get there. Chad, tell us about Julia.
Julia, directed by Fred Zinnemann, written by Alvin Sargent, cinematography by Douglas Slocombe, music by Georges Delarue, starring Jane Fonda, Vanessa Redgrave, Jason Robards, Hal Holbrook, Rosemary Murphy, etc. Synopsis: Lillian has a lifelong friend named Julia who fought against Nazis prior to World War II. Based on Pentimento by Lillian Hellman.
Yeah, so yeah, a little bit of backstory. Yeah, that Pentimento book Lillian Hellman wrote, and I didn't realize Lillian Hellman actually wrote one of my favorite plays, The Children's Hour, which they made a movie about with Audrey Hepburn. And I know that play because it's one of the first like lesbian dramas shown on stage. It was a very prominent play. So going into this, I heard the name Lillian Hellman. I went, wait, is that supposed to be based on the actual Lillian Hellman? And it was, and it makes so much sense now. Just the queer undertones and everything she pulls along there. But yeah, she wrote this about a lifelong friend. There's a chapter in this book, Pentimento, about this friend that was supposedly this Julia figure that they expanded into one big movie. So it's basically a chapter of Lillian Hellman's autobiographical book that they kind of made into a big movie. Very interesting because it's like, half of it is like this exploration of this relationship of friendship, but then there's also like this whole World War II angle. It's hard to say what the film's actual like plot is, like I feel like it covers so much. Like it meandered a little bit for me.
Yeah. This was one of the ones that was really, really, really hard to find. And then I felt like, we were kind of rushing to get this out a little bit, not a big deal, but I felt like I did have to kind of rush to watch this one But since, I didn't really have the best ways to watch it, I don't feel like I got the best viewing of it, but I still feel like, yeah, I'm on the same page with you when you talked about like meandering. Like, I feel like they, they had kind of like, this relationship they wanted to build, but then, the relationship didn't really get built all that much because Julia's barely in this movie. She
Yeah.
doesn't show up until like the end of the movie. You, you can say
Yeah,
whatever you feel.
well, it's interesting because that was kind of my biggest complaint is that it's about this essentially a romance. I know a lot of people like to say it's a friendship, but I do think it's a little deeper than that. I just
Yeah,
the
same.
vibes I'm getting. I mean, it is Pride Month, so maybe I'm just in that mindset, but it did feel like there was a little bit of a more romantic attraction there. But yeah, we get a little bit of them as kids, but it's mostly about her just kind of like hearing about Julia, like, oh, Julia's in the hospital
Mhm.
because this thing happened in Vienna, and she's taken away for treatment, so she doesn't get to see her, and she's always on the phone, like, where's Julia? Is Julia okay? Is Julia okay? Then she gets called to accomplish this mission, which when you hear about it, you're like, oh, there's like this big mission, and your best actor from Judgment at Nuremberg, Maximilian Schell, is there, and he's like, hey, like,
Mhm.
we're gonna do this mission, and you're gonna go do this thing, and if I see you and you say hello to me, I'll know you're in. But if you don't want any part of this mission, you blow right
Mhm.
past me, and we'll never speak again. And like you're like, ooh, what's gonna happen? She's gonna go into like Nazi Germany. She's a Jewish girl going into Nazi Germany, and then the mission itself is just kind of mellow, like she meets Julia at this restaurant and has to give her this money, and then that's it. Like it's not this action-packed thing, and I don't think it has to be, but when the whole movie is just kind of this slower paced drama, and then they get to this whole pivotal, like, there's going to be this mission thing, you think it's going to go somewhere a little bit bigger, and then it really doesn't. And then as soon as she gives the money over, we don't see Julia again, and we find out she died. So it's weird. It's like
Yeah.
it's just a weird structure where I'm almost wondering maybe the chapter itself that they were basing this on just wasn't rich enough, and they were just trying to like fill in the gaps and try to elongate it, because it doesn't need to be as long as it is. They could have made this a
Mhm.
70-80 minute movie, but maybe give us more of Julia and Lillian's childhood, or even their romance. Like give us more of that, because that's, I think, the most strong, powerful stuff. Like the sit down when they're in the restaurant together talking is the most powerful stuff in the movie. And I wish there was
Absolutely.
more of that, because it seems like it's more Lillian's story than Julia's. And I get like that's probably what they were going for, but I think Julia is a more interesting character than Lillian. I think Julia is the one who is literally in Germany doing these things. Like that could be a really cool story to tell, but that's not what we see. We hear about it from Lillian's perspective. So it's just a weird way of telling the story, which is very interesting on paper, but not as interesting on screen, despite the
Yeah.
actors who are all incredible. I mean, this is Meryl Streep's movie debut. This is the first movie that Meryl Streep was ever in.
Meryl
And
Streep
then
was in this movie?
yes, she is.
When does she show
Plays.
up?
She shows up for a scene in the middle there.
Oh.
She plays Anne Marie.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Vanessa Redgrave obviously wins the Oscar for it, but like Jane Fonda, Maximilian Schell, your best actor for Judgment at Nuremberg. Like there's a lot of great actors in this. It's just like for some reason it just didn't go anywhere for me. It didn't feel like it
Yeah.
lived up to the potential of its cast. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like when I was kind of watching this, I was kind of getting a little confused. And then, because it was like, someone in a boat talking about their past, and then you get to see the past kind of unfold a little bit.
Mhm.
And then I was reading and I was like, wait a second, is this even about Julia? This is about someone named Lillian. And then I was like, okay, all right, so this is a different movie than I thought. And then,
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. Like if they would have had like a lot more of, maybe I was just expecting a different kind of movie, but a lot more of the relationship building. I think it could have been a lot stronger of a movie. But then I also, it kind of does turn a little bit into a Mission Impossible kind of movie there for a second. But
Yeah.
the mission
Without the action.
without the action, but the impossible mission that she goes on is just her sitting on a train and trying on different hats. So
Right.
that's the mission.
Yes. Yeah, like, oh, be careful how you put on, now you're gonna put on your hat and then you're gonna walk out of the, yeah, you can't cry,
I
all this
mean,
stuff. Yeah.
it is about Nazis. It is about World War II. So it's definitely a serious subject. But
Yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
still also don't. I do think the acting was pretty great in it between the two main leads. But I still think if it wasn't as deep of a story, like when I watch something like we'll get to it at some point, a Schindler's List or Life is
Mhm.
Beautiful, I get like a really like heavy
Mhm.
I just didn't really get that from this one
Yeah.
either. So it's just
And I think it's also because if you remove the actual Nazi Germany from it, if you just set it in a like even modern day, and it's just you have to deliver this thing to this person that you have a past with that you haven't seen in so long, like that alone, the Nazi Germany stuff didn't really elevate that to me. If
yeah,
it had just been a normal, story about trying to get this money to this person. Also, it's just like yeah, like you said, Julia isn't really much of a presence. There's a presence because she keeps talking about her, but like I wanted to see more of Julia herself and why this relationship is so important. Why those tears come out at dinner. Why there's all this bent up frustration and almost tense nervousness and all that stuff. Like it would be like calling Toy Story Andy's mom's story, and it's like Andy's mom. She's in like 2 scenes. It's not about that. It's about the toys. Just like if this movie were called Lillian, I'd be like, okay, but you're obviously like, I don't even know how they were able to sell this either, because you're calling a movie Julia and then a movie not about Julia. Like Annie Hall is about Annie Hall. So I just
yeah.
think it's an interesting film. I didn't really vibe with it, but again, like rarely are we gonna have a slate of movies where all of them are firing on all cylinders. This one just kind of underperformed for me a little bit. Yeah. So, Julia herself did win an Oscar. Vanessa Redgrave. It won 3 Oscars. The film. It won for Best Supporting Actress for Vanessa Redgrave, Best Supporting Actor for Jason Robards, who's good but also didn't really stand out to me in this, and Best Adapted Screenplay. It is nominated for 11 Oscars though. It was tied for the most with The Turning Point, and it won 3 of them. But the other ones it was nominated for were Picture, Actress for Jane Fonda, Best Supporting Actor for Maximilian Schell as well, who was also in like 1 scene, but good for him. He's an icon. Best director, best cinematography, best costumes, best editing, and best original score. So picked up a lot of great nominations. But yeah, very interesting. So let's go far. Let's go far away. Galaxy far, far away. Let's do it. Let's rip off the Band-Aid, the one y'all came here to see. Let's talk about Star Wars. If you haven't heard about Star Wars, Chad's gonna tell you about it right now.
Oh, yep. Star Wars, directed by George Lucas, written by George Lucas, cinematography by Gilbert Taylor, and music by John Williams. Starring Mark Hamill. Hamill? Am I saying that right? Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Peter Cushing, Alec Guinness, Anthony Daniels, Kenny Baker. It's Guinness. Kenny Baker, Peter Mayhew, David Prowse, and James Early Jones. Did I say that? James Earls Jones.
Chad,
Something
your
like that. I don't
pronunciations
know.
are on point.
Synopsis: Rebel fighters seek to destroy the Empire's new weapon, the Death Star.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to talk about Star Wars because I feel like it's just such an ingrained piece of pop culture that like how do we just say like, oh, I liked it or I didn't like it's hard because it's Star Wars, and some
Right.
people don't love this as much because if you're looking at it from more of a modern perspective, you've only seen the sequels or something. Like maybe this looks a little dated, even though George Lucas did try to do an update on Disney Plus or when those special editions came out, which I don't love that much. Some of it stands out in a bad way, but yeah, I mean, what's to say? Chad, tell me, what is your experience with Star Wars? Do you like this film?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing, as I've alluded to before. I didn't grow up liking or loving Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I just heard since I was born, basically, just about it. And then I started to say I'm gonna finally watch these. As a kid, I tried, and I just thought they were very dull. I was just I don't know. I was just like, I don't. Why do people like this? This is like a '70s movie or something. I was like, I don't understand what is going on. But I didn't have like any parents who like passed it down to me. I think that's very important a lot of the times is
Yeah.
movies like that, like my dad passed down The Wizard of Oz, to me. So that's even older movie, but that's one that he passed down that I'm like,
Right.
it's something that I loved as a kid, but Star Wars, not so much. I had to get into it a lot later. So yeah, I have a weird kind of Star Wars ranking. I don't like put the originals above everything else necessarily, but
Right.
I do think this movie is great. It's freaking Star Wars. I mean, it used to be called just Star Wars. Now it's called Episode 4 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
I'll always
the
still call it
classic
Star Wars, but yeah.
it's the classic hero's journey with a different shell on paper. This movie could have been terrible. This movie could have been just like a weird schlocky, sci-fi fantasy, whatever, that just like didn't really work. Like, I feel like there was like an episode of like Community or something where they were making like some like weird, student film that was like kind of Star Wars-esque, and I'm like, it could have been that, but instead this was fantastic, and it had John Williams score it, and George Lucas writing a little bit later with the prequels, not so great, but this one felt like it just hit the zeitgeist, and just
so many iconic lines too with that script, like I've got a bad feeling about this, and just may the force be with you, and I find your lack of faith disturbing, like really good iconic quotes that like are still part of the lexicon today. Like it's crazy how much of an impact this had, because movies like this, I feel like since we haven't had a lot of movies like this where like, an original story that like is very big and bold in its world building and universe building that isn't based on like a book. So I'm not talking about like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, but like solely original. I feel like a lot of films have tried to replicate it and have not succeeded. Like you have like stuff like Alita Battle Angel, which was supposed to be like this new like groundbreaking thing, and it kind of just was like a flop. People love it, but it didn't make a lot of money. And then you have stuff like Avatar, but that's a little different. That's more about the technology and stuff. But you really don't have big innovative blockbusters like this come along every once in a while and really have an impact like this did. Again, Star Trek based on a series, so like it's hard to find a series that has had this much power like this, and consistency just in the terms of like they're still making them today, they're still cranking them out and doing them well. Like I think a lot of people are liking what they're seeing with Obi-Wan and with Mandalorian and stuff. Some people don't, but again, like it seems like maybe not as much in this Disney era, but it seems like people still love Star Wars so much that like it's hard to find a phenomenon that has been able to top it since that has been solely original. Even Marvel based on comics, like it's really hard to find something without a source material that just like has as much of an impact as this does.
And in 5 years will be the 50th anniversary of this movie. But yeah, going into watching this movie this time, I tried to go into it with a picture this mindset where I'm like, let me just watch this movie as a movie that came out in 1977. Nothing came after it. It's just this movie is what I tried to do, and it was definitely really hard because I'm like thinking about things that supposedly happened before this in the canon and in after, and then I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't make much sense.
Especially the Luke and Leia sexual tension, which valid though, because they don't know their siblings, so like it makes sense that they'd be attracted to one another. But looking back on, that's the one aspect that I'm always like, help
me, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
She's beautiful.
And there's just other little, because this is not a perfect movie. There's just other kind of little things that I'm like, doesn't really make sense to me. I'm like, he hands him the lightsaber. He doesn't know what the hell it is. This powerful thing that can cut you in half. And then Luke just goes, starts waving it around. And Ben doesn't go, what the hell are you doing? Put that thing down. That's dangerous.
Right.
He doesn't do that. He just lets him wave it around because he's a hero, right? He gets to just do that. That's fine. Nobody yells at him or calls him a Mary Sue or anything like that. He's Luke Skywalker, so he's fine. The film is definitely not perfect. I had like little nitpicks here and there, but the power of this movie just in general and its icon status, I think just like says who gives a shit? Like it's every movie is allowed its like little nitpicks and discrepancies and stuff like that, or even if that's not even a discrepancy for some people, it's just a little strange for me, but other than that, I love, like you were talking about, all the lines, all the world building, relationship building, the tension between Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford, and this is fantastic. Harrison Ford, you have like the kind of a jerk, but then you also have like the building of the Force and just how mystical it is, and then later on it might not be so mystical, but at this point it's more of a like religious kind of thing, and I just think it's a really cool way to build this thing up.
Yeah, and I always forget how much of a looming presence just Anakin is. Like the talking about his father and like it was your father. He
Hmm.
served in the Clone War. Like it's really interesting, but also looking at it with the grand scheme of everything that's come after. Like those moments hit more resonantly for me. And even with the series, the Obi-Wan series that's happening, like I like to see those parallels and when they are talking about their relationship, Obi-Wan and Darth Vader and all that stuff.
If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
I just really, really do like just this film as a standalone film, but especially in the grand
Yeah.
context of things. Also, just the music is so like
Oh.
it's my favorite music score. It is, and I know it's this cliche, but it's like those music you never forget it. Like everyone could hum, even if you've never seen Star Wars, you could probably hum the Star Wars theme, or you could at least do the Imperial March. Like I really do think so. Like it's just become such a great part of pop culture. It's hard to talk about this film very specifically because everyone's seen it, everyone knows it, but yeah,
Hmm.
it really is special, and I do hold it so fondly to my heart because this was the first I saw. We were gonna go see episode 3, but then my dad was like, "Yeah, let's watch these ones real quick," and we watched this one. I don't think we watched any of the others yet, but I was too young to really just figure out what was going on. But I just remember being like blown away by the lightsaber battle, and it's considered by many to be one of the tamer ones. But like I was excited by it because like I had never seen anything like it, and I try to put myself in that mindset of like 1977 and watching this on the big screen for the first time. Like when Vader comes out of the fog for the first time, like that must have been so cool to see for the first time on the big screen. Because now we just take it for granted, but that was just such an interesting character design at the time. And yeah, like you said, Han Solo, he's kind of a jerk, but he's still an iconic hero and character. And Harrison Ford was still breaking out. Chewbacca,
Hmm.
my favorite movie character, love it too. Yeah, just so many great images and iconic moments and stuff. So and a great dogfight at the end. Not as good as Top Gun Maverick, but like really good dogfight at the end with the
Yeah.
ending battle and stuff like that. So
Yeah, it's like such a simple kind of premise, kind of story. But it's just like such an interesting way to tell it, like, in space and just like everything then. Like you had like stuff like Metropolis and stuff like that before it, and even 2001: A Space Odyssey before it. But like, with this one, it was just such a no one had really seen anything like that before,
yeah,
and I think it just hit when it hit because that's what people were ready for at that time,
hmm
and
yeah,
everything with this movie just is kind of perfect for what it is, even if you can nitpick it a little bit or
yeah,
you can
hmm
think that the acting's not the best, but they
yeah.
had like a lot of these people were like no names except for Harrison Ford,
Right.
right?
And they were
So
young. Like Carrie Fisher, I think was 19.
true.
Like it was very a very spry young group of people, and those characters though are so iconic. I like the evolution of like Luke and Han as characters because they have to go somewhere, and I think they always knew that this was going to be a hit. I think maybe they didn't, but I'm sure they planned that Luke would maybe kind of grow a little bit because he is a little bit of that like whiny little farm boy, but there is also such like a golden boy quality to him that I do like. And when he's staring out at the sunsets, like that gives me chills every time because like
Oh
that's
yeah,
our hero, and immediately we're
iconic
like just
moment.
drawn into his character without words. And I forget how funny R2 is in this as well. Like R2 is a little sneaky little bastard in this. He's funny. Yeah, causing a little mischief, but at the
And
end, like his final
C-3PO
little
is
like,
funny too.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so good. Yeah, I can go on and on, but really really great film,
Mhm.
obviously. Very important one. Which is your favorite though? While we're here, like, what is your favorite Star Wars film? Since we're not going to talk about Star Wars ever again on this show, which is crazy.
I don't yeah, it is kinda crazy. It's hard to tell. I don't really have a true favorite.
Hmm
The one that, is the hot take that, I really enjoy, I think, because I really loved it from the start, and then everyone and their mother started to, like, hate on it, is I'm a big Last Jedi,
Yeah,
defender.
it's great.
I
Yeah.
like that one so much. But I also, yeah, I love a lot of these original ones as well. And I don't know, I think a lot of the times because Empire Strikes Back gets so much love, like people are like, this is the objectively the best one. I think for me, I'm like, not as much. I don't really like the
Yeah.
ending of that film
Yeah,
as much.
I do
But
like it, but I agree. Like, I don't think there's an objective best Star Wars film because they're all different. They hit at different points. Like Empire
true.
is a downer. It is. It's a the heroes don't accomplish the mission, and Return of the Jedi is almost so triumphant and celebratory that some people don't like it because it's a little too cutesy with the Ewoks and all that stuff. That's my favorite.
Yeah,
But like Last Jedi too, it breaks convention. It questions a lot of the mythology and stuff, and I love that about it. But some people
same.
don't. And I think that's what's special about Star Wars is the real fans are the ones
Yeah,
who not necessarily defend everything, but can at least like have something very important to connect to or important to say about every movie. You might dislike something, but you can at least eloquate why, and you still have your favorites, not just blanket everything's good or everything's bad, or like, oh, this is how it has to be. This is like they're open to the world building because this was an original idea. It can go anywhere, and I like
so good.
the fans that embrace that idea, even if the movies don't always hit. I like the idea of just like being optimistic and just kind of just loving what it is, what it means to you personally, rather than just trying to like say what it should be and trying to define what Star Wars is and stuff. And I think sometimes people lose sight of that because it is so special to a lot of people. So I hope,
Absolutely.
I'm with you though. Last Jedi is not a hot take for me because I do love that movie. And the Academy loved this movie because they nominated it for 10 awards and gave it 6. It won a special achievement for like just overall. It won just like a special Oscar, but actual Oscars won John Williams for best score. Obviously, it won best art direction, best costumes, sound, best film editing, and best visual effects. The ones it didn't win were best director for George Lucas, best picture, best original screenplay, and best supporting actor for Alec Guinness. Very interesting that he's the one who gets nominated because he was the one I heard when he signed on, kind of thought it was a little hokey little project, didn't really want to do it, thought it would be
Right.
kind of silly and stupid and wouldn't succeed, and then it ended up succeeding very well, so much so that his character now has a series currently airing almost 50 years later. So I'd say that was a success and a turning point in Alec Guinness's career, an already great career, but a turning point nonetheless. So let's talk about the turning point, our final film of the slate. Chad, tell us about the turning point.
All right, The Turning Point, directed by Herbert Ross, written by Arthur Lawrence, cinematography by Robert Surtees, starring Shirley MacLaine, Anne Bancroft, Tom Skerritt, Leslie Brown, etc. A synopsis: a ballerina and a former ballerina reflect on what their lives could have been had they chosen different paths and confront feelings of envy for each other's decisions.
Mm-hmm. So Chad, what did you think of this one? Because I know both of us, this was a first watch for us, and again, this is one of the more hard to find movies like Julia. So
Hmm.
maybe that made your viewing experience a little different. But I'm interested to hear what you think of this one. What do you think of the most losingest nominee of all time?
Yeah, yeah. This one was hard to find, so I kind of scrambled to watch this one, just like with Juliet, kind of at the last second a little bit last night. But with the Turning Point, it was interesting because I did see the Rotten Tomatoes score for it before I watched
Oh,
it,
I haven't
but
even seen it.
I actually check it out later. It's not super high, but I
Oh,
will say
wow.
I don't think I enjoyed the Turning Point entirely as a whole, but there are certain moments that I think are some of my favorite like parts and
Mm-hmm.
themes of this
Yeah.
whole slate of films.
Mm-hmm.
I love, because it's basically about Shirley MacLaine and Anne Bancroft. Shirley MacLaine didn't become a ballerina as that was her dream, and she ended up, upon what Anne Bancroft told her to do. There's controversy about if this actually happened. She actually told her to
Yeah.
have a kid and have a family and stuff like that instead. But that was the choice that she made, is to not pursue her dreams. And then you see the other person who did pursue her dreams, but then you see that she's kind of envious of the family. Like that's something she never got to do. And we can kind of see these people, like especially Shirley MacLaine, just having this like deep kind of embedded like guilt and sense of regret of something that she really wanted to do, something she was super good at and she never got to do, and she has to kind of like live vicariously through her child. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a common theme that happens with a lot of different people, and a theme we see in media a lot of the times. People trying to live through their kids, and or you have Anne Bancroft's Emma, who is basically trying to also kind of like get that sense of having a kid by kind of taking Shirley MacLaine's daughter under her wing and showing her how to be a better ballerina and stuff like that. And because she sees something in this kid and she can go on to be something great, something that her mom was never able to actually capture. And then you kind of get the sense of the mom might be a little bit jealous of the daughter. You know, because you can kind of think about that. Like if it's something you never got to do, your kid gets to go do it, you should be super, super happy for them. But I think it's also a natural human emotion to also be like, well, I never got to do that. And that sucks. But my kid gets to do it. I'm happy for them, but I'm also really kind of sad.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that central dynamic with Anne Bancroft and Shirley MacLaine's characters is the best stuff in the movie. Like I love how it builds to that final fight. It's such a good moment that just the conversation back and forth.
Good girl.
But the water in the face, but then actually beating each other up and then just bursting out into laughter, like that to me was just so interesting because you never see
I
that
love that
really
part.
in movies that are supposed to be dramas. Because this is a drama, it really is. I do think the beginning meanders a little bit. Like I do think, like Julia, I wish they just kind of just got right to the crux of their relationship earlier because it feels like they're doing a lot setting up the daughter's story, and then later on they kind of then bring up the themes of, well, we had this falling out and like you got to live your career and I didn't get to have my career. And I wish that kind of came into play a little earlier and so we could see it really evolve, because it feels like that arc kind of happens halfway through, and that's the most interesting arc to me. But I do like how we do still see this relationship more so than like Julia. Like we actually get to see these characters interact a lot. We get to see their ups and downs. We get to see them really happy to see each other at first, but then seeing how like those unresolved feelings kind of come and bubble up to the surface. And I think it's a great feminist piece as well, because it's a lot about, you know, women's decisions and you know, their careers and their ownership of what they're doing with one another. It's not about the necessarily the romances or men in their lives. And that's why I think the daughter storyline is probably the weakest, because I didn't really care about that relationship with that dancer guy. It didn't really add much to me. I was much more interested in seeing the older women and their storyline. I shouldn't say older because they look amazing for their age in this movie, but and Bancroft never ages. She's gorgeous. But,
Absolutely.
but you know, the older women in this film, I was more intrigued
She'll
with them
seduce
than I
you.
was.
Watch out.
But yeah, than I was with the younger ones. But again, like the dancing also, I love. Like I'm a sucker for like really great ballet dancing or just dancing in general. Especially classical dance like this. So like I really dug a lot of those sequences, but I can see if someone who's not necessarily there for that and wants more of like the plot, those scenes can kind of drag the film down a little bit. But I loved it. Those are actually some of my favorite scenes. Yeah, it takes a little while in the beginning to get going, but I do think it made a satisfying arc and conclusion. I love the performances. The two leading performances are so good. Yeah, I just think this is a very solid movie. Is it the best of this slate, like in comparison to some of these other heavy hitters? Probably not, but I still think it's worthy of maybe not 11 nominations, but at least a few of these. And I do think it's a well-made film. It gets a point across, it has satisfying character arcs. It's your very like, you know, average, I wouldn't even say average, but like just solid best picture nominee that like I can't really argue against, but I'm also not like super ecstatic about to where I'm like ready to go recommend this to everyone, especially because it is impossible to find anywhere.
Yeah. I do wish this one actually was a little bit more available, because I did quite enjoy parts of this movie.
Yeah.
Especially that scene that you talked about, the fight scene.
Yeah.
I thought was like really, really epic. It doesn't last very long, but it like builds up where they're talking, then they're arguing, and then they just start going at it physically, and they just actually start like kind of spanking each other.
Yeah, I mean that scene is really like textbook. Yeah, like how to build tension through dialogue and like just make a scene just kind of grow over the course of a few minutes. Yeah, it's just a perfect scene.
And then it's just really funny to also see like the way like, you know, kind of older women who don't fight would fight probably, and then they just get like, this is ridiculous, we're spanking each other right now, and then they just kind of like make up, which I just thought all of that was really great. One of the negatives that for me, which actually now I'm wondering if it's an actual negative for the film, was I was saying there's so many like dance sequences in this, which I think if you love like ballerina or dance, you could probably get a lot from. But I'm like, just like the structure of it, I'm like, okay, now we get like, I don't even know how long it was, but like 20 minutes of just like this. Now this is this couple's dance. Pause. Now this is this couple's dance, and I'm like, oh my god, like, are we gonna like get back
Yeah.
into the movie at some
Mhm.
point?
Yeah, and it almost feels a little bit more like a documentary in some senses because you're really getting the ins and outs, the behind the scenes. Like the dramatic stuff is between Anne Bancroft and Shirley MacLaine, but all the other stuff almost seems like a documentary of like just what an average day in the life of a ballerina is, which is interesting to some. But
Mhm.
do those two necessarily marry all the time? Maybe not. And some aspects are much more interesting. But I see where you're coming from because I have seen there are scenes like that in a lot of movies where there'll just be like maybe like a trippy sequence that's like a 10-minute sequence of something that's just totally separate from the movie. A lot of people, my favorite movie, Singing in the Rain, a lot of people don't like that one, like Gotta Dance sequence because they think it just like it feels totally separate from the rest of the movie. I disagree. I
Mhm.
think it
Very,
celebrates
very
everything.
divisive. Yeah.
I think it celebrates everything the movie is like speaking about, like the color and the transformation of film and just the evolution of film. Anyway, it's a conversation for another
I
time.
wish.
Unfortunately, not on
I
this show.
wish one day. I was about to say. I wish one day we could talk about that, but we'll
Nope.
never get to
We can
on
talk
this
about
show.
it on another show, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe all of a sudden people will think it's a bad film, so we can talk about it on a frame rack or something. I don't know. But no, I would never. But I really do think this movie worked for me in those aspects, but I can see how it doesn't for others. So that's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, like if you're in a theater, especially where you can't fast forward or something, I mean, those scenes might be tough for people. Just sort of like, all right, let's get to it. But I found it pretty beautiful.
I can see
But
that. Yeah.
yeah, so it depends,
Some of the sequences, like of like if I'm watching like a sports film, some of the sequences in a sports film can be very enthralling. So it just really depends on what you're into. So I
Yeah,
definitely get that for
for
sure.
sure. Yeah. So The Turning Point, nominated for 11 Oscars. Like I said, the only film next to Color Purple to be nominated for 11 and lose all 11. Again, like I said, The Power of the Dog was nominated for 12, lost 11, but it still won one. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director. It was nominated twice for Best Actress for Shirley MacLaine and Anne Bancroft. It was a double nominee. It was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for the young dancer Mikhail Baryshnikov, sorry. Best Supporting Actress for Leslie Brown, the daughter. Best Original Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound. So 11 nominations, did not win a single one, but maybe it'll win one of our awards. We'll see. Let's first rank these nominees. That's what we do at the end of the show. We rank our nominees, and then we're going to give our Best Actor and Actress of these 5 films. Doesn't necessarily have to be a nominee. So, Chad, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is, no surprise, is Julia.
That is also my number 5. What is your number 4?
It is The Turning Point.
That is my number 4. I will. Let's see. What is your number 3?
The Goodbye Girl.
That is my number 3. What is your number 2, Chad?
Annie Hall.
That is my number 2, which means for the first time, I think, ever on the show, I think it's the first time ever,
It's only 5
Chad
movies.
and I have the same exact ranking. It's only 5, but we have
Wow.
the same exact ranking. So I'm just going to go from bottom to top again, just to recap. Number 5, Julia. Number 4, The Turning Point. Number 3, Goodbye Girl. Number 2, Annie Hall. And number 1, Star Wars. Star Wars is our best picture of 1977. We kind of expected that going in, but I do think a lot of these movies are really good. And the one that won Best Picture, I would have put at number 5 if I was ranking this a week ago, but since I've watched it, I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm very happy with how the rankings went.
That's very cool.
But yeah,
man.
that's so funny. We have the same ranking. I don't think that's ever happened. Yeah, no, it
I
hasn't
like that.
happened because no.
Thought I was
coin
going to
flippage
disappoint you there for a
necessary.
second.
Well, if you would put Annie Hall at 1, it would have been a fine coin flip. But yeah, our Star Wars is our number 1. But now let's get to our best actors and best actresses. Chad, you're first for best actor. So tell us, who is your best actor of 1977?
I was struggling with this, and I might end up taking yours. I'm not sure, but I'm going Richard Dreyfuss in The Goodbye Girl.
Yep, you took mine. We're on the same page today, Chad.
I had
yeah,
another
tell us.
one, so I'm gonna see if you take that one, but probably not actually. Now that I'm thinking of, how about I give you that one, and then I'll pick another one if you don't.
No,
have
no,
a
I want you to
backup.
take Richard
Okay.
Dreyfuss. No, because he's your favorite actor here. Tell us, like, what is your favorite part of that performance, or? Just in
Yeah,
general.
I think it was just like, his character. I just love that scene when he's like I was talking about before, when he first comes in. There's a little bit of a cat cameo. When he comes in and, she's being so demanding of him, but then he's like forthright, like, like, no. And he's like, like not dominant because they're both kind of being dominant. They're both arguing, bickering back and forth. But he's like sitting there standing up for like what is his. Like, he's like, no, you can stay here. even though this is my apartment now, you can stay here, but here's the rules. This is what I'm gonna do. And I just love that, and just like the comedy he brings with it, being like, I'm gonna walk around naked and you're gonna have to deal with that. That's just something I do. And then
Yeah.
he is later naked playing guitar, and she's like, oh my God. He was serious about that. And
Yeah.
just like his connection with that daughter, like when they're in the horse and buggy and stuff like that, and just like such strong scenes. Like he gives us a lot of like, emotion with his character, but such humor with it as well. And just like you said, just him acting in all the plays, and just practicing his lines and stuff like that. It's just so fun to watch. I love Richard
Yeah.
Dreyfuss.
I've got to say that is the second award that Richard Dreyfuss has won in Picture This, his first being for American Graffiti. So Richard Dreyfuss now has 2 Picture This awards.
And I got
I'm
both of them.
yeah, and I'm gonna add an actor from American Graffiti. I'm gonna go Harrison Ford from Star Wars.
That was my backup.
Yep. See, we are seeing eye to eye today. His character's so iconic, and I think his character's supposed to be a little more like annoying and unlikable at times, but so cool at the same time. Whereas I think sometimes Mark Hamill plays Luke a little annoying to the point where people like just don't love it all the time. But I think Harrison Ford is nailing the exact character he's portraying in this. He's just so smug, so cool. So many great lines. Even at the end when he's hugging Luke and Leia, you see that heart come from him too, which is something you don't really see a lot in this movie until the ending. Just the abundance of happiness and joy that they accomplish their mission. I do think he's even better in the next few movies. I think his best performance is actually in Force Awakens, but I do think he's very good in this, and I did want to give him a shout out because again, we're not going to get another Star Wars film on this show. Maybe we will, maybe in the future, maybe one of the spin-offs, but as of now, there's no other.
I just wanted to throw out, because I just love just his delivery of lines in that movie. He's just so perfect. I think he is the best actor in that movie for sure.
I agree.
And just like it's like, well, I don't even want to work with you anyway. Just stuff like that, where it's just like you can see like I don't know. I just love the performance of that as well. It's a great choice, Bill.
And then my best actress, it's probably a cliche, but I'm going Diane Keaton. She won for this performance, but I'm going Diane Keaton for Annie Hall. She just brings a real warmth to this role. I actually love the moments they first meet the most, like just the quirkiness and kind of that unspoken like awkwardness, but also that like lust at first sight type thing when they're at the tennis match. Like,
oh God, what a dumb thing to say, right? I mean, you say it, you play well, and then right away, I have to say you play well.
She just radiates just charisma in that movie, and I do love her in The Godfather, but this is probably my favorite performance of hers. I love it. So Annie Hall, Diane Keaton would be my best actress. Chad, who is your best actress?
Definitely thought of Annie Hall or Diane Keaton, but I chose Shirley MacLaine from The Turning Point. I thought she was excellent. I mean, I love her in The Apartment. That's such a great movie. We will talk about that at some point, won't we?
We will. We'll talk about that. But I have to reserve 3 hours for that because I love that movie.
I think we all have had kind of like, moments where we've, had regrets in our lives, or just choices that we made early, and then later we go, you know what? I really wish I would have done this instead. And she plays that throughout this movie so well. Just her, regret, her jealousy kind of her daughter, and of Anne Bancroft's character, who was also excellent. I could have easily chose her as well. But just like all this emotion, and then just builds up, but they're just screaming at Anne Bancroft, and then just, spanking the shit out of her. And it's just, I just love her performance in this. She's so good. I love Shirley MacLaine.
Cool. So to recap, our best picture of 1977 is Star Wars, also known as A New Hope for some of you. Chad's best actor, Richard Dreyfuss for The Goodbye Girl. My best actor, Harrison Ford from Star Wars. Chad's best actress, Shirley MacLaine from The Turning Point. And my best actress, Diane Keaton from Annie Hall. Really strong year. Chad, any last thoughts before we move on to the next month?
No, not on this year, but we're going kind of like from we're going from 1 year with an iconic film and a bunch of other films, and then another year with kind of an iconic film and a bunch of other as we start our first series.
Our first series. So yeah, we wanted to do this all together because it's the midst of the summer. We're on a high. We want to celebrate the blockbusters still, and we're going to probably the most consistently nominated film trilogy in Oscars history. It was one of the only trilogies, if not the only trilogy. Oh no, sorry, there is another trilogy, but one of the only trilogies to have all three of their movies nominated for Best Picture, and that is the Lord of the Rings franchise or trilogy, because the Hobbits were not. But those movies, we wanted to go back to back to back to kind of just compare them, because it would be weird to do like Two Towers and then a few years later do Return of the King, and then we'll do like 2001 later. Like, it didn't make sense. So we're just gonna go in order: 2001, 2002, 2003. So there we go. We teased 3 months for you. We won't tell you the movies in the next 2 slates. You could probably look them up. But for next month's slate, for 2001, we are covering the following movies: A Beautiful Mind, Gosford Park, In the Bedroom, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and Moulin Rouge. So that is the 5 for 2001 that we will be talking about. A lot of different genres for sure. We got a musical, we got a big epic, we got some British comedy, and we of course got some dramas. But it'll be all fun to talk about nonetheless. Chad, where can they find you? Any thoughts as we head into our Lord of the Rings series?
Very excited. I have a different approach to the Lord of the Rings, or different history with the Lord of the Rings than Dylan does and a lot of other people do. But I'm very excited to talk about that amongst a lot of these other ones, because I think, the comparison and the, passion behind that film versus a lot of these other films is just very different. So it's just going to be very interesting to see like where we rank all of these. I've seen, I think the only one haven't seen is In the Bedroom. So it'll be very interesting to see how I feel recapturing all of these. You can find me here. You can find me kind of everywhere in like the Movie Trivia Schmodown fan leagues. I do trivia a lot of places. I do a debate over at the Movie Battlegrounds and TMG. I like doing that. And then I have my own channel where I try to rank stuff. It's just Chadwick Webb. And we've done the first 2 phases of the MCU recently. So we're looking to do the third one at some point. Maybe Dylan might show up there, and maybe Denis as well, because I want to do a Denis Villeneuve very soon. That's been kind of a long time in the making. I think that's about it. Sometimes I pop up on Draft Day, which is a very fun other show on the Dill Pickle Movie Network. Check that one out. We did Star Wars recently, so
and
very
go
fun.
vote, people. It's not too late. We haven't filmed the next episode yet. That episode will be Tom Hanks this month, so in honor of Elvis. So if you're interested in Tom Hanks and want to come watch us draft things, please be our guest. You can find me at Dylan_Randazzo, Letterboxd, Twitter, and here at the Dill Pickle Movie Network. Please subscribe. Give Chad those likes and views. Give all the co-hosts we have all the likes and views, because they all deserve it. They all put in hard work. I was managed to scrap together these 5 movies in time, and I'm very grateful that everyone has been very flexible with my schedule, because my schedule has been crazy this month. But next month should be a little bit easier as we head into Lord of the Rings. Chad, let's make a decision now. Are we going to watch the theatrical versions or extendeds, or either or?
Oh, that's maybe a hard choice.
For the sake of the Oscars, maybe theatrical, because that's what they nominated, maybe?
Yes, I have both versions, so let's do theatrical.
Okay, so we're gonna watch the theatrical versions just because that'll be what the actual Oscars nominated,
sure.
And that'll be interesting because I actually think that might change some of my rankings down the road, because I think there's one theatrical version which I think is not as good as the extended, so maybe that'll change up some of the rankings. But we will still, obviously, if we've seen the extended, or I have, we'll discuss it. But I'm excited for those. So stay tuned for Lord of the Rings next month, 2001, and then we're gonna keep going 2002, 2003, and then we'll be at the November, October, Christmas, Halloween area where we will get into some horror films, maybe some other classic Christmas films, maybe some other films starring some of these actors as well. Who knows? It's going to be a party, and we can't wait to have you all there. So we'll see you all next month. See you later.